Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar in our new series for our new RRTC. My name is Tori Adamson, and I am the Outreach Specialist for Tools for Life, Georgia's Assistive Technology Act program, based within the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. So excited to have everyone with us today. Couple of little housekeeping things before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available for viewing later for those who are not able to attend the live broadcast or for anyone who wants to go back and view it again. An email will be sent out to all who registered within the next week or so with the link to view the recorded webinar. We do have live captions going today by our wonderful captionist, Heather. Thank you so much, Heather, for providing those captions. You can view them by going to the toolbar at the bottom of your screen and clicking the CC button for closed captions. Or you can also go to a stream text link, which I have right now on our screen in your browser if you're not able to view the captions within the Zoom. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to, one more thing. We don't have chat enabled for participants, but if you have any questions, please utilize the question and answer button again at the bottom of your toolbar. And as the presentation continues, we'll make sure that we answer those questions. Now, I will toss it over to our presenters to introduce themselves, and we will get started.
Thank you. And welcome. As Tori said, this is our first session in a new webinar series on employment and people with physical disabilities. And today we're going to be introducing our new Rehabilitation Research and Training Center, or that's the RRTC part that you'll keep seeing, which we called Access PD, and the PD stands for Physical Disabilities. We'll be talking about the state of employment for people with physical disabilities and the projects that our new center will be undertaking to learn what we can do to improve employment outcomes. So next slide. So, actually, previous slide, sorry, back up, one more. My name is Karen Nolchis. I am a researcher at Georgia Tech, and I'm joined today by Salima LaForce and Fran Harris, who also are researchers at Georgia Tech. Next slide now. We also are going to be talking about a grant that is funded by the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation, Disability Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research, or NIDLR, which is a center within the Administration for Community Living, which is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Next slide. So today, our agenda is to provide a little bit of background about people with physical disabilities and their employment experiences. I've already thrown out some terminology that you might not be familiar with, so I'm going to provide a little bit of background information. And then I'm going to be turning the mic over to Salima LaForce, who will be talking about work experiences of people who are in standard employment. And then Fran Harris will be talking about contingent employment. They're going to be sharing some of our preliminary interview findings from the project. I'll be coming back talking a little bit more about some of the other projects that we have planned for the RRTC, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion at the end. Next slide. By the end of the session, participants will be able to identify 3 common problems encountered by employees with disabilities, describe how assistive technology can be used to help employees with physical disabilities perform their jobs, list 2 potential benefits and 1 potential barrier. Hold on, my screen is covered. Provided by contingent employment. List 2 tools to help employees and service providers make decisions about assistive technology, and describe how stakeholders can get involved in RRTC research and access training and resources. Next slide. So I'd like to provide just a little bit of background here. Next slide. Access PD stands for the Rehabilitation Research and Training Center, or RRTC, on accommodations, employment supports, and success for people with physical disabilities. And our goal for the project is that stakeholders, people with physical disabilities, vocational rehabilitation counselors, and employers will have increased knowledge about workplace accommodations and options for types of employment that will result in fewer unmet needs for accommodations, better accommodation outcomes, and improved employment outcomes. Next slide. So first of all, what do we mean by physical disability? Well, we're defining physical disability as a limitation on a person's physical functioning, mobility, dexterity, or stamina. Now, a person may also have a sensory or cognitive limitation or neurodiversity, but we expect them to also have some sort of limitation related to the mobility or dexterity, stamina, and that these sensory or cognitive limitations would be secondary. Examples of some of the diagnoses that might fit under physical disability include arthritis, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, limb amputation, carpal tunnel, low back pain, things like that. Now, the US Census Bureau's American Community Survey estimates that about 4.4% of working age Americans have difficulty with walking or climbing stairs. So that's that mobility part. That represents about 9 million people nationwide. The ACS, the American Community Survey, doesn't specifically ask about dexterity or stamina. However, they do ask about difficulty with self-care, such as bathing and dressing, and that might include some of those individuals. About 1.7% of working age Americans have difficulty with self-care. According to the American Community Survey, these two groups, people with ambulatory difficulties and self-care difficulties, are have the most unemployment and the highest levels of underemployment among people with disabilities in America. While 45% of working age people with disabilities overall are employed, it drops down to about 30% for people with ambulation difficulties and only 18% for people who have difficulties with self-care. So there's obviously a lot that we might be able to do to improve this situation. Next slide. Now, our particular focus in this project involves workplace accommodations, and that's strategies, environmental modifications, or assistive technology that help a person perform a job task that they otherwise might not be able to perform or might not be able to perform as effectively. And I have a few examples here of some assistive technology, including a magnifier, a trackball, a large button phone. But also, like I said, it could also be environmental modifications, such as this wheelchair ramp. Next slide. So why are we focusing on workplace accommodations? Well, workplace accommodations can often mean the difference between whether or not a person is able to work. From our own research in the past, we found that 75% of our respondents weren't able to perform all of their job duties without accommodations. And Marini et al. In their study of voc rehab services found that for individuals with spinal cord injuries, assistive technology services had one of the highest correlations with positive employment outcomes. So this is where we think we might be able to have a little bit of an impact. Next slide. Unfortunately, we're also finding that people aren't always getting the accommodations that they need. From our past research, we found that 31% of people with mobility impairments and 28% with upper extremity limitations had unmet accommodation needs. And there's a lack of information about what works for whom, including the impact of other individual and environmental factors that might be playing into that. We've also noted that accommodations provided by employers and insurance tend to be those that are inexpensive rather than the best fit. So that might be another area where we can have some impact. And then finally, in addition to accommodations, sometimes different types of employment might provide some assistance. Contingent employment, which Fran will be talking about a little bit later, provides less job security and benefits, but it also provides flexibility that might address some of the accommodation needs that people have in the workplace. Next slide. So as a result, we have 5 research projects as part of our RRTC. And we're going to be focused a lot on the first 2 today, where we are interviewing people to find out more about their workplace experiences. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Salima, who will be talking about the impact of assistive technology and accommodations on employment. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Next slide, please. Okay. So yes, as Karen mentioned, I'll be speaking about our longitudinal survey for people who work in traditional jobs, more so, the 9-to-5 type of job position. Next slide, please. So our project goals, and you'll see this reference R1 and R2, that just refers to Research Project 1 or Research Project 2. But both of our projects have synergistic goals. So we both want to build an evidence base that examines the relationship between employment experiences, work accommodations, ATUs, and employment outcomes, such as job performance, satisfaction, and participation among our target population of people with physical disabilities. So there isn't currently a single instrument that can collect all of those types of data in order to run analysis to uncover the relationships. So for the R1 project, the longitudinal study, our goal is to develop, test, and deploy an omnibus longitudinal survey, which we are calling the Work Accommodations and Technology Survey, or WATS. And our R2 project, led by Fran Harris, will develop, test, and deploy a survey targeting contingent work practices among Black, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, and Indigenous peoples. And we are calling that the Contingent Employment for Marginalized Populations Survey. Next slide, please. So we're currently in phase 1 of our project. And at present, we are conducting narrative, semi-structured interviews with a mix of contingently and traditionally employed people with physical disabilities. So we developed our interview guide together so that we can use one interview guide to collect data across the different type of work arrangements. The purpose of our interviews is to identify the variables that impact traditional and contingent work practices and experiences. And we would like to describe the impact of AT accommodation on accommodation use on employment outcomes. So at this point, we want to qualitatively describe this. Later, when we develop the survey instruments, we'll be quantitatively describing it. So again, we will qualitatively describe the relationships between individual and environmental factors, participation, performance, satisfaction, and other employment outcomes and life outcomes as well, to see if there's an association with job satisfaction and maybe community engagement. We also will uncover unique characteristics within these relationships among minoritized populations. And Fran will speak more in depth about that when she presents on the contingent employment project. Next slide. So there's 2 types of employment. We have traditional employment, which I mentioned is more full-time employment. Usually it comes with health benefits. There's part-time and other benefits as well. Part-time employment, which may or may not come with benefits, but even when they do come with benefits, they tend to be less comprehensive than full-time employment. And people who are traditionally employed typically have a regular schedule, a regular employer, a supervisor, and regular pay. Now, when we talk about non-traditional or contingent employment, we're talking about people who are independent contractors, freelance workers. They might work for a temporary agency or be in the gig economy. And I have here on the right image of electronic mediated work app which is just showing a person's hand holding a smartphone with a car, like ride hailing service, delivery service, and doing some knowledge work on a contract basis. And so we're seeing obviously a rise in that type of work as well. And then there's also self-employment, which falls somewhere in between traditional and contingent, depending on where the individual is with their company. So, for example, you can be self-employed as let's say self-employed as, I won't even come up with a with an example because it's eluding me right now. But let's say as an editor, and but you only you're the only person. You're incorporated or you have an LLC, but you're really only just doing it on your own at this point. But later, as the company expands, that self-employment becomes more like a traditional job, in that you are able to have a regular schedule, a regular pay, and you're also paying others. So that's why it's kind of in a gray area. Next slide, please. So personal factors that affect employment of people with disabilities. From the narrative interviews that we have completed thus far, we are seeing that these personal factors include comfort with officially disclosing disability, and how well accommodation needs have been met or not met by voc rehab programs, employers, and schools. People have mentioned their knowledge of and access to and comfort using assistive technologies at work. These are impacting work outcomes, especially as it relates to access to AT and accommodations, impacting AT and accommodations taking longer to be put in place, that sort of thing. And then, of course, there's our personal individual factors, such as our age, our levels of pain and fatigue, other health factors that may be involved as a result of our disability, or just in addition to disability, financial security, and educational opportunities, as they're different based on different respondents. Also, different respondents have had different support and caretaking responsibilities for children or other family members. So these are things that impact sometimes not their ability to work, but it defines their I don't want to say limitations, because that's not where I'm going, but it's like, these are the parameters for which I have to work in, no pun intended. And so therefore it can influence the types of jobs that they take and the types of hours they take and things like that. Next slide, please. Oh, not next slide, but yes, the ultimate is self-advocacy. And knowing one's legal rights as a person with a disability is a key tool to ensuring a worker's accommodation needs are met. And that is a pretty major finding that we're seeing so far in our narrative interviews, is that the higher the level of self-advocacy, tentatively we can say that we're seeing greater worker accommodations, workplace accommodations needs being met. Next slide, please. So common barriers that employees with physical disabilities encounter in their jobs. Again, these are common barriers that we're seeing. In some cases, they are common barriers in the literature, but they're also reflected in our narrative interviews. Next slide, please. Oh, so the number one barrier, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is stigma and bias in the workplace. Having this as a barrier, it can lead to mistrust and resentment among coworkers and supervisors in the work environment, as some people without disabilities may view a workplace accommodation as special treatment. So ability to take more frequent or longer breaks, ability to work from home as an accommodation. These things might be resented by other employees who, without disabilities, who have not requested any type of accommodation as such. Another is it can lead to underestimating a person's ability to actually do the job as well as a person without a disability, which leads again to negative stereotypes about a person's intelligence, talent, and abilities. And of course, these stereotypes can be compounded by equally damaging stereotypes around race and ethnicity, gender, and age. Stigma and bias can also lead to the exclusion from informal work-related social activities, such as going out for lunch and, cultivating relationships such that you'd want to have dinner with your coworkers. Just not being invited to those things. Or are you trying to make me hurry up? Okay. It can lead to exclusion from opportunities for career advancement. For example, attending trainings. We did have a participant state that a training was scheduled. She needed to attend it, but she couldn't get to it because the elevator wasn't working. And then employers and human resources departments may just be lax about enforcing their legal responsibilities to ensure equitable treatment. Next slide, please. Another well-known barrier is transportation. Here I have a picture on the right of a MARTA mobility van. And while this is accessible transportation, in the image, a man is being entered into the van with a lift. People, not just in Atlanta, but other people who use paratransit around the country have stated that it's not accessible for getting to and from work, because it does not allow you to just go directly to work that has all these other stops. It takes a long time. So this is inaccessible public transportation. And there's some other areas where it's been inaccessible to outside of the paratransit. Not owning an accessible car or van that can transport a person to and from work, or they can drive themselves. And closing the loop, it's inaccessible parking when they get to the workplace. So there's this, continuum of getting to work, and then once I'm there, is it also accessible for me to park and enter the building? Next slide, please. Number 3, fear of losing benefits. So this is more likely to happen in contingent employment, but it's also, we're seeing it with traditional employment, because health insurance is a key priority for many people with disabilities, but we've especially seen this to be the case for people with physical disabilities, especially those that use home and community-based services. So unemployed people with disabilities are eligible for benefits from the Social Security Administration. So we have SSDI and SSI insurance. But those types of insurance impose monthly caps on personal income. If a person earns more than their approved amount, the government will terminate their insurance, which means they'll have no more Medicaid and lose access to their home and community-based services. But this is the hard part, is the transition to employment with benefits does not resolve access to home and community-based services for a full-time employee if the benefits don't cover, if the pay isn't high enough and the benefits don't cover HCBS, then often a person will have to forego that type of job, or accepting a job offer. Next slide, please. How am I doing on time? Okay. So another common barrier is physical barriers in a workplace. So this has to do with entering and exiting a building. As I mentioned earlier, broken or inaccessible elevators, and only stairs and escalators might be available. Lack of accessible bathrooms. This has come up a lot for us. meeting rooms with tables that are not big enough or too tall to accommodate someone in a wheelchair. And those someones have actually had to sit apart from the group. So that is like exclusion, really not sitting and not having a seat at the table, literally. And inaccessible informal office spaces where people gather, such as the kitchen and break rooms, and chat informally. Next slide. Another barrier is a lack of appropriate assistive technologies. So, for example, people who are using mobility aids, they might be better off using a standing wheelchair, if that's their preference, or a wheelchair with elevation so they could reach tall shelves or instruments. And this is related to many types of job tasks if the shelves aren't lowered, but also, for example, a teacher who would like to be at the head of the classroom and writing on a chalkboard. We've also seen that communication aids that allow effective conversations between coworkers, clients, and supervisors may not be appropriate, as they may not be able to be used in informal situations or meetings, and mostly technology mediated. Environmental controls that allow an employee to create comfortable workspace. This is usually not at all within the control of people in the workplace, and computer equipment and software that allows employees to complete job tasks. And finally, inaccessible proprietary software such as payroll needed to perform the job. Next slide, please. So common types of accommodations used by people with physical motor disability. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of use of mobility devices such as wheelchairs, manual and power, scooters, rollators, walkers, orthotic devices. We are seeing several with modified personal vehicles, flexible schedules that allow employees to work from home. An accessible office environment is key for traditionally employed, low shelves, filing cabinets, desks with adjustable heights, and the use of mainstream and specialized assistive technologies for job tasks. All of these, it's misnumbered. All of these are accommodations used by people with physical disabilities. Next slide, please. Okay. Finally, I'm able to share with you a persona that illustrates some of what I've been talking about. So a persona is a composite character representing the behaviors, needs, goals, and attitudes described in participant interviews so far. Next slide, please. So here we have Sam. This is a pseudonym, and this is not a picture of Sam. But he is a 70-year-old white male with a spinal cord injury, T3 complete, which he acquired during a car accident when he was 40 years old. He's a recent widower. He's earned an MBA, and he has a history of both full-time and contingent employment. He uses a manual wheelchair, has a van with a lift, uses a reacher and a laptop to teach. And before his accident, he worked as a substitute teacher, so that was contingent, while he was in graduate school. Following that, he worked for an international marketing company full-time for 8 years. And then he had this car accident, and after the accident, he was unemployed for 2 years. And he moved back to his own hometown where he said they had better rehabilitation services available. But he did say he just stayed at home for 2 years. Next slide, please. And so after 2 years at home, he decided to contact the local voc rehab agency, and they helped him to decide to pursue a teaching vocation. He worked under contract for several years in private schools while looking for full-time work. He finally got a salaried full-time position with benefits at the high school he attended as a student. He retired after 19 years, but he returned to do substitute teaching and volunteers in the high school library because he loved his children. He has a very strong ties to the community as well. His workplace accommodations included a standing wheelchair to write on the blackboard. Eventually the wheelchair did break, and he found it to be hazardous. So he needed another option. So he eventually won a grant to buy a computer and projector so he could write on his laptop instead of the blackboard. So it was projected for the students to see. The bathrooms in the school were already accessible. Although he mentioned that teaching could be awkward sometimes because of the inaccessibility of the science lab, he found that students were very willing to help him whenever he needed something. Next slide, please. So this story illustrates a positive employment outcome for Sam. Both of you have helped him to find a new career. He had worked as a substitute teacher off and on before he got a job in business before his energy. And when he was ready to work again, he did find a new career that he loves as a full-time teacher. His employers were cooperative in accommodating his needs. Again, this ties very closely to the close-knit community. And assistive technologies in the van were paid for by his insurance after the accident, and all other accommodations were improvised as needed. The work environment was supportive and inclusive, and he loved his job, and it provided the financial security he needed, including health insurance. Next slide. So now I'm going to hand it over to Fran to talk about contingent employment. Thank you.
Thanks, Salima. I'm going to talk a little bit about contingent employment, as Salima said. It is complicated. Definitions vary depending on who you talk to, but the most important characteristic is the lack of attachment between employer and worker. For example, a freelancer works for different companies at different times rather than being permanently employed by one company. An independent contractor provides work or services to different companies on a contractual basis. Gig workers are people like Uber drivers or people who work for temp agencies to do substitute teaching or different kinds of temp work. There is always a reliance upon a conditional factor for the employment, and it's always for a fixed or limited period of time or specific job to be done. The United States Bureau of Labor Statistics defines contingent workers as temporary, those without an explicit or implicit contract for long-term employment. Next slide, please. The positive, there are trade-offs for being a contingent worker. The positive is it provides an entry into the workforce to gain experience. So if you're not sure what you want to do for a career, or if you want to try out different jobs, it's a good way to gain experience. It also provides opportunities to counter underemployment while you're looking for a full-time job. And it provides flexibility in how you perform your job tasks, for example, when and where, which allows for a better work-life balance. The negative is pretty significant because most receive lower pay than traditional employment and few, if any, health benefits. There are no legal protections such as the provision for work accommodations, and it has the potential for undermining your goals for full employment. Next slide, please. Okay, how and why do people choose contingent work? Salima mentioned the importance of SSDI and SSI. And in contingent employment, this is really significant. If you look at the 2024 maximum caps for insurance for SSDI, it's $3,822 a month, or $45,864 annually. For contingent workers, this is a limiting factor. And if you have a family, it is not very much money. For example, if a person gets a promotion or extra work or a full-time job, people will sometimes reject that extra job if it puts them over the limit because they're not sure how they're going to pay for their health benefits or receive their community's services. So actually, this cap prevents advancement in somebody's career. People actually reject a promotion because it will put them over the limit, which is a catch-22. For example, there was a tax accountant that we have interviewed who had a spinal cord injury, and he worked as an independent contractor for most of the busy tax season. That's during that period he made most money. But he also made much higher salary than the caps would allow. So he arranged for his salary to be paid over a 12-month period so that he wouldn't go over the cap. The bureaucracy involved in losing benefits and then regaining them month to month can be a real major hassle that deters people from going over the limits, even for 1 month. Okay, the flexibility and life-work balance is another important advantage to contingent work. It can address health needs such as pain and fatigue that permanent work can't. It also allows people with disabilities who are rearing children or with serious disabilities or caretaking for a family member. It allows them to do the work at a schedule that's convenient for them. Okay, the role of technology. This is also important. Many of our subjects have work from home now. And as contingent workers, this has many benefits. It alleviates transportation worries about getting to and from work. If you're working at home, you don't have to disclose your disability to your employer. And home can be a much more convenient place when you have what you need around you, when you've already self-accommodated, you've received everything you need, and consequently, you have the freedom to organize your workday to accomplish the tasks. This is especially important for people who experience pain and fatigue, often during the workday. This way, they can integrate periods of rest into their routines. The importance of assistive technologies and provision through vocational rehabilitation and the state AT acts is also important. It allows them to get the necessary AT in place at home before they start the job and as they move from job to job. Also, the apps, the recent development, well, not so recent anymore, but the participation in the gig economy, such as Uber or Lyft, is made possible through apps. Okay, slide 4, please. Okay, another reason why people choose is for volunteering. It can be a deliberate strategy for gaining important employment opportunities. It will give them the experience they can put on their resumes. Also, we found a lot of people are now involved in advocacy. So these volunteering advocacy positions also educate them and at the same time provide a platform for them to get involved in other advocacy paid activities. This goes to hobbies as well as a basis for income. So basically the reasons for choosing contingent employment is the means or strategy in career development. It's a goal in itself that combines important flexibility with a life-work balance. And it is a transitional or experimental approach to employment after a disability is acquired. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to present 2 personas. As Salima pointed out, this is a composite character, and the photographs do not reflect a real person, and David is a fictitious name. This shows a man in a wheelchair sitting by the water at sunset. David is a 45-year-old male, white Latino. He uses a manual wheelchair. Before he was injured, he worked as a bartender, and since the accident, he decided he cannot be a bartender, and he's been unable to find full-time employment. David's main recreational activity and passion is scuba diving, and he's developed strong friendships with other divers over the years through a local scuba shop. So to make ends meet, he works at the dive shop repairing scuba equipment. He charges a flat rate for a specific repair and has an informal agreement to invoice the shop owner for a percentage of the fee. That is, it's piecemeal work. Before his accident, David's income was about $50,000. Currently, he only earns about $15,000 a year. Together with SSDI and his savings, he's able to make ends meet, but he's been unable to find a full-time job. David, when we interviewed him, he's basically 3 years post-injury, and that is a period of adjustment for someone who's had a very sudden change in their abilities. So his contingent work is also, I think, reflects that period of adjustment. Next slide, please. Okay, Angela has spinal muscular atrophy. We're looking at a picture of a white girl sitting in a wheelchair. She's 24. She has a BA in English literature, and she earns about $28,000 a year. She lives with her family. She uses a power wheelchair. She has leg and wrist braces and drag and dictate. She also has a paid attendant when she goes out or travels. She freelances as a copy editor and reviews articles for various online publications. Her work is on a contract basis. She also has a paid internship in a theater focusing on inclusivity and diversity themes. She wanted to learn how to manage accounts in the theater business. So she traveled from New Jersey to New York once a week with her paid attendant, and learned a great deal and really enjoyed being out and about. She still continues to volunteer to edit and review articles in addition to her contract work for a freelancer, and for online disability periodicals and website. And she uses her expanding social network to increase her employment opportunities and to find out about other assistive technologies. Her goal ultimately is to be an independent contractor at publishing houses. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, congenital versus acquired disability relationships are different for assistive and mainstream technologies. As we can see, David who has a spinal cord injury, doesn't have a lot of technologies, and is still in the process of adjusting to his injury. Whereas Angela, who was born with her spinal muscular atrophy, is very comfortable with technology. Okay, one of the things about AT for people like Angela is that they're more likely to use mainstream technologies like wayfinding devices on apps and smartphones that have GPS guidance and mapping previews. One woman with upper body problems had said that she uses dictation software. She said it's gotten way better so that I can type on my own, but sometimes speaking is easier. And now it's usually integrated into the operating system of whatever you're using, if you know where to find it. Also, people with congenital disabilities identify AT through personal networks, and this requires experience in how to navigate Facebook and find these networks and groups. For example, one woman said, I've seen this particular AT on my Facebook. I have a couple of groups that I'm in with other people who have disabilities. Other people talked about how they had got it and what they had been through. So I was like, oh, I should look into that. So I did, and yeah, I'm currently fighting with my insurance company about it. So here's a woman who is very savvy and not afraid of confronting her insurance company about the necessity of it as a work accommodation. Okay, they're also comfortable with the evolution of technologies, both mainstream and assistive tech. They're more savvy in general about what works for them, how it works, and how well it can be integrated successfully into other technologies they use. That's one of the key features. They'll often say, I think about cost, I think about the benefits, and then I think about how long it's going to last and how well it fits in with the other technologies that I use for work. For them, also, technology brings a powerful sense of independence. It allows them to move around freely and perform specific job tasks that are necessary for their job. One woman said, you can go to an employer and say, listen, I have an extra tool, so I don't need to keep asking for someone for help with such and such when a device breaks. So they have an easy rapport both with their employer and with the idea of technology. Okay, this is in direct contrast to the people with acquired disabilities that we've interviewed. They tend to use only the special functions and assistive technologies that they've received from folk rehab or from physical therapists who fit them for wheelchairs. They are not comfortable with mainstream technology as an assistive technology. People are still learning, like David, to live with different bodies. The change is very sudden and adjustment can take more time. And as we saw with Angela, as we saw with David, he had a manual wheelchair and that was pretty much it. He acquired his AAT, his wheelchair through a rehab hospital and evaluation. Right now, he has no personal networks, no social network he is participating in. And for them, technology is not incorporated into a sense of self. It continues to be the other. It's something that doesn't really feel right to them. There's nothing intuitive about it, as more people who have more experience feel. So one woman said, I had to have my power chair adjusted to give me a little bit more physical support in the way that I need. It helped, but it didn't completely ameliorate some of the physical issues I have sustained with typing. I still have problems, which limits how much I can do. And another woman said, I think sometimes you really just want to be quote unquote normal. It's work to work these items. It's hard. Sometimes I can't get places to do things because the technology is not available to me. And then sometimes it just won't work. So you can see that some of these people are inexperienced, or maybe they need their work technologies to be adjusted even more. And again, it takes time. Next slide, please. Okay, so the disability onset, whether congenital or acquired, impacts participants in the same way. That is, for contingent employment, they have certain goals. For David, work was for income only. For Angela, contingent work was part of a career path. The AT use and choices they made about, the AT use and choices that they made were based on the knowledge that they had, and there was comfort and knowledge about their mainstream technology use. I had other things I wanted to talk about, but I think I'll stop there because I've been informed that we only have 10 minutes left and I want to give Karen a chance to finish. Karen?
Thank you.
Okay,
Next
sure.
slide.
Oh, you're going to be going into the ones that I just moved through them quickly. Yeah.
Can you skip ahead to a listing of the projects? Oh, actually, back up 2, please. So is Fran, could you just mention what your project is in terms of the contingent employment?
Sure. The overall goal of our project is to increase knowledge about contingent employment practices among Black African Americans and Hispanic Latino. These are marginalized problems with physical disabilities. Basically, I think anybody who's done research knows that it's very hard to recruit subjects from marginalized populations. There's a level of distrust between researchers and these populations. People are not sure what's in it for them. And the distrust is also a product of what's known as historical trauma. For example, among Black African Americans, the Tuskegee experiment that was an observational experiment that watched basically 600 people experience and die of syphilis between 1932 and 1972, produced, when that came to light, what people were doing, it really instilled a complete distrust between researchers. So there is a lot of work to be done to try and reach out to marginalized communities. And one of the things we've learned is that it's important to create a dialogue with people in these communities. It's a collaborative. It has to be experienced as a collaboration to find out what people are looking for, not just telling them that this is what is needed, but actually creating a collaborative relationship with people. And this takes time, and it's very much a participatory action, a research methodology, making people who are formerly subjects participants in the research. Okay, that's basically it.
Thank you. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Skipping ahead. Another. One more. After the references. Okay. So we've highlighted one more slide. We've highlighted two of our projects that are looking at the employment experiences of people with disabilities, both in traditional and contingent employment. I'm going to just touch very, very briefly on a few other projects that you're going to be hearing more about in the upcoming months. So next slide. The first one, our project R3, is going to be looking at how durable medical equipment, namely wheelchairs, is provided. One of the problems that we run into is that insurance currently covers wheelchairs that are appropriate for home use. They don't always consider what might be needed to get around the community or get around the place of employment. So we're going to be taking a closer look at that. Next slide. So we want to ask a few questions like, how effective are power wheelchairs that are prescribed only for use in the home when used in the workplace? In what specific work context do specific power wheelchair features act as a facilitator or barrier to positive work outcomes? And what are the relative costs associated with providing power wheelchairs that allow an individual to achieve functional independence in the work environment? Next slide. So from that, we hope to gain some more information about wheelchair features and costs, and possibly provide justification for changing the policy on how this equipment is funded. Next slide. Our next two projects deal with an evaluation of the use of accommodation decision tools by VR counselors. And we have two tools that we're going to be evaluating. One is Work Access, which is an online accommodation assessment tool. And the other one is the Continuum of Assistive Technology Mastery, or the CATM, which is a tool for evaluating an individual's mastery of their assistive technology. Could you skip 2 slides? So I have here a screenshot of Work Access, and this is a tool that has people input information about what their abilities are, what their job tasks are, their work environment, and it offers suggestions. So on this screen, I have a task for staying on task. We have some different approaches that a person might take, including avoiding sensory distractions, changing tasks during the workday. And I have a pop-up for one of our solutions, marking finished tasks on a to-do list app, which has a description of what that accommodation would look like, a link to more information, and people can go through and explore different options for their accommodations this way. Could you skip 2 more slides? For our CATM, our looking at assistive technology mastery, we have 20 factors that we've come up with that are related to assistive technology, and we have people rate those on a scale from novice user to empowered user. So we might have something like independence, uses assistive technology without assistance. And does the person do that rarely, sometimes, often, or consistently? From this, you get individual and overall scores, so you can figure out what areas you might want to put a little bit more focus on, and you can also track progress over time. Next slide. So ultimately, we want to look at how VR counselors use these two tools, and we believe that this will improve the counselor's abilities to provide assistive technology services. Next slide. Okay, that was our research projects. We also have a resource center that we're going to be creating, which includes training, so things like this webinar series, technical assistance, including what ways for you to contact us with questions, and other online tools like work access. And we're also going to be disseminating our findings along the way through a website and newsletter. Actually, if you start getting a newsletter from us, I'm going to be asking Tori if we can add the people on this call to our mailing list, if that's okay with you. And in our last year, the project will be putting on a State of the Science conference. Next slide. So in summary, our goals for this project are to help stakeholders make better workplace accommodation choices, help stakeholders improve accommodation practice, inform business and government policies and practices, and to guide future R&D related to workplace accommodations for people with physical disabilities. And I think we are just about out of time, but next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. My last slide. How can you get involved? Well, for starters, if you are interested, we are looking for people to participate in our research. Projects R1, R2, and R3 are seeking people with physical disabilities to share their employment experiences. Project R4 is looking for VR counselors to evaluate the decision tools. If you're interested in either of those, you can email us at this link, and we will be sharing our PowerPoint slides at the end of this session. You can also look for our more information on our Resource Center website. We don't have it quite ready yet. We hope to have that launched by the end of this year. In the meantime, we do have a temporary page that you can contact for information about different project announcements. And then finally, participate in our training. This is our first webinar for this series. We'll be conducting webinars every other month, with the exception of next month, because we just couldn't pass up Disability Employment Awareness Month, October. So we'll be throwing in a bonus webinar next month, focused on the Work Access Project, actually. But we are always interested in knowing what else you would like to get training on. So thank you. Next slide. I think we are kind of going over, but I think we can stick around if people have questions. Are there any questions?
Let me check. We had one question that came through about asking if the slides would be available later, and I answered it. And yes, this will be available later for all who attended, as well as those who registered but were unable to participate. But that is all we have as far as questions. So with that, I'm going to say we're going to wrap up, but we do have a survey that we would like to get your feedback from. I will be sending this out as well to everyone who participated. We want to know how we did with our webinar today, and what kind of things you want to see with our future webinars for this series, if there's anything in particular that you want to see. So, and yes, CEUs will be sent out later. I just got to wait on some confirmation things with the AAC Institute. So if you requested continuing education units or CEUs, or any CRCs for rehab counselors, those will be sent out over the next few weeks as far as how to access those. And with that, I think we are done for the day. So if there are no other questions, we will conclude our session today. So thank you so much to Karen and Salima and Fran for all of their information, and everyone have a wonderful and rest of your day.
Thank you.